In the dusty haze of a forgotten frontier town named Dusthaven, where the sun scorched the earth like a relentless branding iron and the wind whispered secrets of broken dreams through the creaking saloons, lived a woman named Eliza Thorne. She wasn't born to this life. No, she had come from the green hills of the east, where rivers ran clear and families gathered around polished oak tables for Sunday suppers. But fate, that cruel jester, had twisted her path when her wagon train was ambushed by outlaws on the Oregon Trail, leaving her orphaned at 16, her parents' graves marked only by makeshift crosses in the endless prairie. Eliza had clawed her way west, surviving on scraps of kindness from strangers who saw her wide blue eyes and golden curls as something fragile, something to be pitied or possessed. By the time she reached Dusthaven, her innocence was a tattered rag, and her body had become her only currency in a world that valued women like cattle at auction. The town was a ramshackle collection of adobe huts and wooden facades, where miners drowned their failures in whiskey and cowboys rode in from the vast ranches seeking oblivion in the arms of whoever would have them. Eliza worked at the Rusty Spur Saloon, not as a dancer or a singer, those roles went to the younger, fresher faces, but as a barmaid who poured drinks with a forced smile, her apron stained with the spills of drunken regrets. Her room upstairs was a coffin of solitude, with a thin mattress on a sagging frame and a window that framed the endless desert like a mocking portrait of freedom. Rent was due every week to old man Hargrove, the saloon's owner, a leathery tyrant with a mustache like twisted barbed wire and eyes that lingered too long on her curves. "You ain't worth much, Eliza," he'd sneer, his breath reeking of tobacco and rot, "but you'll spread your legs for a roof over your head, won't ya?" Those words echoed in her mind like a curse, a prophecy she fought against but knew deep down was her reality. One sweltering evening, as the sun dipped below the jagged mountains like a bleeding wound, a lone cowboy rode into town. His name was Jack, Black Jack, Harlan, a man forged in the fires of the Civil War's aftermath, where he'd fought for the Union only to return to a homestead burned by Confederate raiders. Tall and broad-shouldered, with a jaw set like granite and eyes the color of storm clouds, he wore a weathered duster coat dusted with the trails of 100 miles, a Colt revolver slung low on his hip, and a Stetson hat pulled low to shade the scars of battles long past. Blackjack wasn't one for words, he spoke with actions, his reputation preceding him like a shadow, whispers of how he'd gunned down the infamous Dalton gang in a dusty showdown in Abilene, or how he'd tracked a band of rustlers across the Rio Grande, leaving none alive. But beneath that hardened exterior beat a heart weary from loss. His wife, taken by fever during the war, and his son, lost to the same raiders who'd torched his home. He sought no companionship, only solitude in the bottle and the open range. Yet, on this night, as he tied his horse, a sturdy Appaloosa named Ghost, to the hitching post outside the Rusty Spur, fate, or perhaps the devil himself, had other plans. Eliza spotted him from behind the bar, her hands trembling as she wiped a glass with a rag that had seen better days. He pushed through the swinging doors, the spurs on his boots jingling like distant bells tolling for the damned, and the room fell into a hush. Miners paused their card games, prostitutes halted their flirtations, and even the piano player missed a note. Blackjack strode to the bar, his boots thudding on the warped floorboards, and ordered a whiskey neat, his voice a low rumble that sent shivers down Eliza's spine. She poured it with care, her fingers brushing his as she slid the glass across the scarred wood, and in that fleeting touch, something sparked, a flicker of recognition, of shared brokenness. "Rough ride?" she asked, her voice soft but laced with the grit of survival. He grunted, downing the shot in one gulp, his eyes meeting hers for the first time. They were deep, haunted pools that saw through her facade, past the rouge on her cheeks and the low-cut blouse that Hargrove insisted she wear. "Ain't none easy," he replied, signaling for another. As the night wore on, the saloon filled with the cacophony of laughter, arguments, and the clink of coins, but Eliza found herself drawn back to him, refilling his glass without charge, listening as he spoke in fragments of his past, the battles, the betrayals, the endless horizon that promised nothing but more pain. She shared her own tales in whispers, of the wagon train massacre, of the men who'd used her like a commodity in exchange for passage, food, or shelter. "I ain't worth much," she confessed finally, as the crowd thinned and the lanterns flickered low, "but I'll spread my legs for a roof over my head." The words hung in the air like smoke, raw and unfiltered, a desperate plea wrapped in resignation. Blackjack's hand paused on his glass, his gaze intensifying. "Woman like you," he said slowly, "is worth more than this hellhole." But Eliza laughed bitterly, shaking her head. "You don't know me, cowboy. I'm just scraps now." He leaned closer, the scent of leather and gunpowder enveloping her. "Maybe I do. Maybe we're both scraps, pieced together wrong." Outside, a storm brewed, thunder rolling in like artillery fire, and the first drops of rain pelted the tin roof like bullets. Hargrove, sensing the shift, barked at Eliza to close up, his eyes narrowing at the cowboy. "Time to pay up or get out," he growled, but Blackjack tossed a gold coin onto the bar, enough for a week's worth of drinks. "Her rent's covered," he said flatly, standing to his full height. Hargrove snarled, but the cowboy's hand rested casually on his revolver, a silent warning that silenced the old man. Eliza's heart pounded as Blackjack offered his arm. "Walk with me?" he asked, and she nodded, stepping out into the rain-slicked street, the downpour washing away the grime of the day. They sought shelter in the livery stable, where Ghost nickered softly, and under the dim light of a lantern, their conversation deepened. She told him of her dreams shattered, of nights spent in fear, of the men who'd promised salvation only to deliver more chains. He spoke of his wife's gentle touch, now a ghost in his memory, and the son whose laughter echoed in his nightmares. As lightning cracked the sky, illuminating their faces in stark relief, Eliza felt a pull she hadn't known in years, a desire not born of necessity but of genuine connection. She leaned in, her lips brushing his, and he responded with a tenderness that belied his rough exterior. Their embrace was fierce, passionate, the rain drumming a rhythm to their union, her body yielding not out of desperation but choice, his hands exploring with reverence rather than ownership.